It is your Tuesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Terrific show coming up. Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune joins me here in just a few minutes to talk Gophers men's basketball. Two things in focus there. Obviously, the biggest one being the coaching search. Ben Johnson fired last week. Marcus and I talked like a couple days before that happened last week as they were heading into the Big Ten tournament. So much has happened, obviously, since then. We'll get into, the leader in the clubhouse. Seems like it's Niko Medved, former Gophers assistant, current Colorado State coach. They will be playing this week in the NCAA tournament for the third time in 4 years. Marcus and I will get into Niko Medved's strengths, the Gophers' job in general, the hard parts about it, the benefits of it, things like that, and where we stand with the search. We'll also get into a little bit of the NCAA tournament. Oh, by the way, the Colorado State plays. A bunch of teams play this weekend. The field is set. Who does Marcus like? Who are some of the Minnesotans to watch? Marcus and I will talk about that. You can also read more about that in his piece at startribune.com. Some Vikings stuff at the end of the show, a point I want to make about free agency. First, though, what did I miss? 2 games last night, 2 games that couldn't have gone a whole lot differently for the Wild and the Wolves. 2 teams that were going in completely different directions, then hit a record scratch Monday night. The Wild grind out a 3-1 win over Los Angeles, a much-needed 3-1 win over the Kings. Get a couple power play goals. Matt Zuccarello gives them the tiebreaker in the third period. They get an empty netter late. They win 3-1. Kind of another one of those low-event games that we like to talk about here, but at this point in the season, they don't care about style points. They don't care if we're bored. They don't care if watching the game is a bit of a grind. They don't care if they're not getting a ton of shots on goal. They just want to squeeze out as many points as they can to get into the playoffs. That's all that matters to them at this point, is getting into the playoffs, securing points any way possible. They hadn't been doing that lately. They hadn't been winning a lot lately. They hadn't been getting the things they needed to get into the better playoff position. They got a much-needed 3-1 win last night. And again, not all that exciting. 3-1. They only had like 21 shots on goal. I think Gustafson had to make 28 saves. So a lot of play along the boards in the neutral zone, just making sure you're making the smart, correct play. That doesn't sound like fun, right? That's not sexy hockey. That's not up and down the ice. That's not everybody getting excited about the style of play. But this time of year, that's how they've decided they are best suited to win. No Kirill Kaprizov still, no Joel Eriksson Ek still. Some of their best offensive players sidelined still. So how do you win? You tighten things up. You bring yourself into a spot where you say, okay, we're going to win it by any means possible, help our goalie as much as possible. They do that on Monday night, get a much-needed win over the Kings. The Timberwolves game, almost a complete opposite. Second night of a back-to-back, so we get that. There's a little bit of difficulty there, but let's face it, Sunday they didn't have to break a ton of sweat. They played Utah. Utah has no interest in winning this time of year. They played very little defense, offered very little resistance. The Wolves routed Utah, were able to rest their starters in the fourth quarter for the most part. Mike Conley Jr. didn't play. He got a night off in that game to rest up. So they get to play Indiana Monday. Indiana, they were playing the Pacers. Pacers missing 4 starters, some of their best players. Tyrese Halliburton out. No Pascal Siakam. So they're down 4 starters. No Miles Turner. So they probably look at it and they say, okay, even though we're playing the second night of a back-to-back, we got a chance here to win again. They'd won 8 in a row. Things were real easy against Utah, and then they just come out flat. They're down double digits in the first half at halftime. They let Indiana get confidence. They come back. They look like they're in good shape. They're up 5 late, but Indiana rallies. They get some amazing shots. Obi Toppin was amazing. He made a couple huge dagger threes, including the game winner with a few seconds left in the corner. Closely guarded, closely contested. You can say the Wolves could have and maybe even deserve to escape that game with the win, but with the way they played, the tone they set, and then some of the shot selection, Anthony Edwards, some of the falling on old bad habits of, getting wild, getting and just not taking care of the ball, not valuing possessions. And I think that's what bothered Chris Finch, their head coach, the most after the game. Here he was talking about sequences in the game where they could have been a lot more focused and under control, which they have been lately, and they were not on Monday.
I just thought at times when we had a chance to kind of take control of the game, we were wild. There was a sequence of like contested threes, deep bomb threes, just, playing too fast, out of control. There was no need for it. It was unnecessary. And when we had them on the ropes, we were up 8. We go under, disrespect the shooter, go under. They make a 3, they cut it now to 5, and then we come down and take just a contested 3. So, and then I think they scored on the next trip down. So now it's a 3-point game. So. There's lots of different ways to close out a game. It does not just making game-winning shots, and that's what we've not been able to do all season long. Is like in that moment, be able to have the composure and the ability to kind of just take control of the game. Then it becomes a shot-making thing, and they made shots and we didn't at the right times.
So again, I think generally the Wolves have had better habits. Lately, they haven't been taking these teams lightly. Utah was a good example, right? They just came out and blew their doors off on Sunday, took care of business. Another chance to do that. Indiana, a better team than Utah. Obviously, even if they're shorthanded, they're going to be a playoff team in the East. That's still a quality team. They've still got quality players. But when they're missing so many guys, you look at it and you're like, okay, the Wolves should be able to take control of this game if they have the requisite focus, if they play with the same purpose they've been playing with. Maybe they eased up a little bit. Maybe it's hard to do that for 82 games. Whatever it is, it's an opportunity missed because Golden State loses to a similarly shorthanded Denver team on Monday. No Jokic, no Jamal Murray. Denver still manages to beat Golden State, who had been on a roll. Listener Jerry made a point about that on email, saying basically, Wolves got beat by the Pacers, resting a bunch of guys. The Warriors get beat by Denver, resting Jokic and Murray. How can this happen? What casual fans don't understand, Jerry writes, about the NBA is that everyone is so damn good. The 9th and 10th players on each team were stars in college or in Europe. That is very true. Given a chance to play, they play their butts off, especially on defense. Agree with that. You can't take any team lightly, especially this time of year. That was a golden opportunity, as it turned out, wasted for the Wolves to gain a game on Golden State. That's critical right now because there's 12 games left for the Wolves. I think the Warriors have a few more, like 14 left. They're separated a little bit there. But the Wolves are battling for, 5 seed, 6 seed, looking to try to avoid the play-in. If they put that one in the bank last night, that's a much better chance to finish the season out of the play-in. As it is right now, probably comes down to the wire. They don't have the tiebreaker against Golden State. Golden State has a harder schedule down the stretch. They haven't played a lot of great teams since getting Jimmy Butler, so watching them have to play better teams now will be interesting, but an opportunity missed. And again, they'd won 8 in a row. We can give them a little bit of a break. This is not like a catastrophe. This is not like, oh my God, here we go again. But it is disappointing because this time of year, you need that focus. Habits don't matter if you don't have them when you need them. And that's, I think, what they learned. A hard lesson on Monday. We'll see if it carries over to the rest of the season. Let's talk Gopher basketball with Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune. Busy time of year for you, Marcus. Not only NCAA tournament coming up, but a Gophers coaching search, kind of a double whammy. You've been through this before, though. Hope you're holding up okay.
Yeah, twice before. One happened during the season, my first year covering the team, or my second year covering the team. But yeah, I'm a little older now.
You're right.
Married, There's a lot worse things at home than having to cover a coaching search, although just to reiterate kind of what even Mark Coyle said, that had to make the decision. There's a lot of people involved, families and things like that. So, you have to be sensitive to them and just, their worlds are turned upside down. And obviously it wasn't done in a situation where a lot of people were aware at 2 a.m. what was going on at that very moment, but the people involved. So, very awkward situation. The logistics of it. Mark Coyle explained to us that because he's part of the NCAA selection committee that, he had to be back in meetings and had to do it at that moment. We're kind of past that now and looking for the new coach. There is a front runner, if you want to say a favorite. I know people use all kinds of different language.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, we could have said a lot of this in the beginning, but Colorado State's Niko Medved seems to be, the favorite is what I've written. But there's a lot of things up in the air, and again, these coaching searches can start off one way, be one way in the middle, and end up another until they're done. And, all I know is, and what the Gophers have said all along, is they want to do this thing as quickly as possible. This is a different time than when they fired Ben and when they've done other coaching changes. The transfer portal, it was the thing back when Ben was hired, but it's a completely different animal now with NIL and the shared revenue coming up. So they need to figure it out as soon as possible. I know they're prepared to hire one soon, but preparations can. We'll have to wait to see who else they can figure out. Who wants the job, but also the favorite. Obviously Niko Medved has to play his last game, and then we'll see from there.
You and I and pretty much anybody involved, even Mark Coyle, has lauded Ben Johnson for the effort he put in. Everybody likes Ben Johnson. Personally, he's a good person. Have you had a chance to express that to Ben? Have you communicated with Ben at all, since the firing, to just say, hey, sorry this didn't work out, but, I enjoyed my time working with you, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. When I was there in Indianapolis covering the last game, was the only local reporter there, and the locker room, the mood in that locker room is the only time you get to be in the locker room, all season, isn't the Big Ten tournament. And I've been there for wins. I've been there for losses. It's been a while since I've been there when, there was going to be a coaching change imminent. And at the time, a lot of people felt like it might not happen. There was a lot of things this season that were, out of the coach's control as far as when you're building a roster, how much money do you have in NIL? I know the players that they brought in did everything they could. The effort was there. It's hard when you bring in, 9 new players and you're asking them to try to figure out in one of the toughest conferences in the country. I know that's a lot of excuses, but there was injuries as well. And, they did figure it out at times, and we're pretty close. I mean, if you think about it, the best year that Ben Johnson had when they were 19 and 11 or 19 and 15, 9 and 11 in conference. It's only a couple games off of what they ended up finishing this year. So I didn't think at that time last year that, they're thinking about a coaching change. I thought they made a step in the right direction. So a few more wins here and there, and things maybe could have changed. But they are what they are. And this is a team that was almost entirely made up of seniors. Whether Ben Johnson came back or not, they're going to have almost a new team. So now, under the new coach, whoever that might be, they have to hit the portal as soon as possible, with the University of Minnesota across their chests, and try to sell the program with a different leader.
Whatever word we use to describe him, front runner, favorite, whatever, what makes Niko Medved the most attractive candidate, or the front runner, however we want to say it? What puts him in the lead right now?
Well, when the last coaching change happened, when Ben Johnson was hired, Niko was again a candidate then. He has strong ties to Minnesota. When this job is open, whether it's football, basketball, hockey, it seems to always be, hey, who has Minnesota ties? Who understands this institution? Who understands, competing in the Big Ten, recruiting here? And it's important, because it's special, it's unique. A lot of people try to compare it to Wisconsin or Iowa, but it's not. not only obviously those programs have had, I'm talking about men's basketball, have more success over the last 20 years, but they're located in a different place. I mean, this is a metro area where there's a lot of other organizations and programs and teams that are trying to get your attention. And there's not, especially these days, there's not everybody has the money to attend more than one sporting event a week. You kind of have to be a diehard either way. The Lynx do a really good job. They have their own, diehard fans. So does Gopher women's basketball now with, Don Plitzawhite, and, Gopher football obviously has been, attended very well. Timberwolves, and Vikings and Twins, you just can't, in the Wild, you just don't touch it. I mean, people go to the games no matter what. So I think the Gopher basketball team is trying to figure out how they fit into all that. Winning matters, but it also, it helps to bring in players that people want to see, and the local guys are the ones they're familiar with. And so I think that's why, you always think about a Minnesota coach who understands and has a relationship with the state that can recruit the best kids here. PJ Fleck, as I wrote in a column over the weekend, when he came in, he inherited some recruits, but when he was able to kind of, sink in and try to attract some talent, initially they were unsure if they wanted to, roll the boat and get into this, this new era of Gopher football. And eventually, even before he had a magical 2019 season, he started to get some recruits. That great year helped build that. A lot of the players that came through the program and went to the NFL or had success in college, they kind of came back and helped them continue, building that success, supporting the program. So I think that's important for the next coach. And like I said, what makes Niko Medved attractive is that he understands that he was a student manager here under Clem Haskins, who's the most successful coach they've had, in recent years. Obviously, even with the scandal, you take away the Final Four, which you can't in our memory, but you can with the banner,
right,
where that is. Mm-hmm. We always compare to what Clem did. And there's a lot of, ex-players still living in Minnesota in the Twin Cities that support the program. And, he understands that. He also understands a tough situation with Dan Munson that happened when he was a manager here, and then also, a graduate assistant. And, he became an assistant at that time, went on to other programs like Colorado State early on that flipped it and turned it into a winner. So he did that as the head coach at Furman. He did it at Colorado State, also draped for a year. He has ties to the current staff with Dave Thorson. But again, he's the Colorado State coach right now. He's trying to, make an NCAA tournament run. He has not talked about Minnesota at all. And his AD recently told a local paper there that he has not been contacted by the AD has not been contacted by the University of Minnesota. And that's how these coaches searches work, Sure. And Mark Coyle has not named any candidates, but he did say that, they'll wait into the NCAA tournament's over for, current coaches, if they're still coaching, to try to ramp things up and make a hire. And, whether it's Niko Medved or another coach that's coaching in the tournament, they didn't know that until Selection Sunday, except, the automatic qualifiers. So,
right.
Things can look one way and then they can completely change the next day or the next week. And I just know that there's things set in stone. Portal opens on March 24th. Because there's a coaching change here, current players can transfer or they can enter the portal. So, as far as we know, Tyler Cochran, he's a senior that didn't play this year because of an injury. He's in the portal. I've heard that, he's doing it probably because, he can, but also he's willing to, see who the next coach is as well. I've heard. So, I think that a lot of the players don't have eligibility left, but the ones that do, and the recruiting class, they're just all waiting like we are.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. And like you said, Colorado State gets into the tournament. They were the automatic qualifier. Might have been close. It might have got in anyway, even if they hadn't won their conference tournament. But this is 3 out of the last 4 years that they're in the tournament now under Niko Medved. They lose the regular season, ironically, to Richard Pitino in New Mexico. They are in the tournament as well. So you got to let that all play out. One more thing before we kind of turn to the tournament and all the Minnesotans playing in it and kind of what to watch there. But if you're kind of thinking about whoever this is, whether it's Niko Medved, somebody else, what is maybe the biggest thing they have going for them? Like, what's the most attractive part of this job in your estimation, and what is the biggest challenge of this Minnesota job? Because I'm sure you've seen it up close from all directions.
Yeah, I'll start off with the challenge. The challenge is money, resources. When I remember years ago when Tubby, every year he would talk about the practice facility. Yeah. And it was, interesting that they built one and started having one after he was gone. Richard Pitino, we judged him on recruiting Minnesota talent, and with Ben, it's money and it's NIL. Would he have been able to keep the team he had last year for the most part? Yes, with more money. Now, some of the numbers I've heard over the last couple months, or several months since they left, are pretty absurd. I'm not sure too many teams could have challenged them in that regard. But, when it comes to that, if you can go, it's just like a bargaining, right? I mean, if you can get a little bit closer to a number and this is where you want to be, I mean, I think, some of those players would have considered it, because they did have a good experience here. But when the numbers are so astronomically different, you or I,
yeah.
We would have to strongly consider.
100%.
Although we're in different position, right, in life.
Yes, we are.
As a kid,
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. But, there's a lot more than money. But, that's one thing that Dawson Garcia, he weighed that. Yeah. I mean, he's not much older than those guys, but he was able to look at it, I think, in a different perspective because he's a Minnesotan and because, he really solidified his legacy here. But he didn't make the NCAA tournament, but, and it's not just the points he put up. He's a top 10 all-time scorer, one of the top, Minnesota natives, to ever play there as far as, career points. But at the same time, he could have gone a lot of places, and this is a different era, right? I mean, he transferred a few times, but he ended up here and stuck through it. So we'll look at him differently. His legacy, I think, is pretty solidified, even though he didn't win as much. But I think this Gopher team, who the next coach is, they're going to have to step it up. Yeah. And trying to fundraise and try to bring in more donors to, create a closer, I don't want to say a level playing field because it probably won't be because so many teams are far ahead, but they can be more competitive and then, build that relationship with a player like you used to. And then you can make a decision, the money might be a little bit different somewhere else, but I really want to play for this coach. I really want to play for this program. So I do think the money situation is something that's in the air quite a bit, more so with shared revenue because they have not voted on that yet. Right. In the House settlement. That'll be in April. Right. And, that doesn't mean, you hit the button and all of a sudden everything's there. Once it's voted on, I mean, they're preparing obviously right now, but, once it's voted on, then there's a lot of things still left in play there when you combine that with NIL, and that's why, again, it's so important to get another coach in here as soon as possible because, you can't make fake promises. There's a lot of coaches I'm sure that do, and they get themselves in trouble, during the season. Sure. You wonder why some of these teams all of a sudden start collapsing that are so talented. And it just happens to be the ones that have the biggest NIL budget, right? Sure. That creates problems, potential problems. But one of the things that I think is a positive about this job is that, the support when you do win. Yeah. The Williams Arena is Williams Arena, right? You can't change the age, but when it's packed, the Wisconsin game, It was a sellout. It's been a while since that happened. And the atmosphere was there. Wisconsin, I don't have them, I'm not going to give away my bracket completely, but at times this year I was like, oh, is that a Final Four team? They're scoring at a whole different level. But yeah, the Wisconsin team was tough to beat this year, even at the barn when the barn was packed, but they had a chance.
Yep.
And a lot of that was because of the energy there. And this is a team that, we've already talked about it. I mean, they fired their coach, didn't live up to expectations, inconsistent, yet it was a sellout crowd. And people want to say that was all Wisconsin fans. That's not true.
No.
Because when the Gophers were making a run at the end of the game, you could hear the crowd, and Wisconsin fans were not cheering, I tell you that.
No.
But yeah, again, the potential with the barn still, they don't have to renovate it to create a good atmosphere. And then, I just still think that they don't recruit, coaches don't recruit high school as much as they used to, but Minnesota still produces the type of freshman that, if you get the right one, can come in and make an impact. Isaac Asima is one of those, a freshman from Cherry, played Class A ball. He was an impact player off the bench. Whether he was a freshman or senior, he definitely impacted the team. And, they can find guys like that, whether it's here or outside of the state. But there's a lot of talent here. The boys' state tournament's coming up here, high school tournament. And I just, did a list of the top 12 players in that tournament. And I want to say more than half of them, maybe the whole list, are Division I talent. And quite a few of them are high major talents. So you're not going to get them all. And maybe you definitely don't want them all because you don't have the scholarships. But
right,
if a coach can come in here and land a couple of them, especially at the top, that will go a long way with the transfers that you can get, and you might be able to flip the team pretty quickly.
Final point along that line, NCAA tournament obviously coming up in just a few days. I'm sure Minnesota fans would love to see a lot of these names in Minnesota uniforms, not just cheering for them from afar. You put together a list of all these great players that'll be playing for other teams, Trey Holloman, all these other guys that we've heard of for a bunch of different years. Who stands out? Who's kind of your big five, and who and what should we be watching, especially in this first weekend of play?
Yeah, I mean, you could read the article for the entire five.
Yes.
But I would say the one that you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on is Dane Danger for Memphis. He's playing Niko Medved in Colorado State in the first round. It's a 5-12 game, and obviously with those games, you just there used to be the most popular pick for an upset.
Yep.
And Colorado State, if you watch them in their Mountain West tournament championship game, it's a very good Boise State team that probably should have been in the tournament, and it wasn't even close. It was not competitive. They have a senior, Nick Clifford, who is definitely an NBA player. Where he goes in the first round, who knows? I mean, shoot the Wolves, but you should look at him because he's got pretty good size, maybe a good two-way guy. And, Nico and Colorado State, they've shown in the past that they have NCAA experience. I remember David Roddy a couple years ago, very good player from Minnesota and Breck. They were a dangerous team. And so I think that they have a chance, but Memphis and Dane Danger, I mean, the impact that he's had, it's in my article, but I'll tell you a little bit. I mean, he had 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 blocks in the championship game of that conference tournament. And he's had close to those numbers for the last 8 games. They're on an 8-game win streak. And I know there's an injury that Memphis has, but that's going to be a really fun game. For 5-12, that's probably one of the better ones. Okay. And obviously you got to keep an eye on what Michigan State does. I mean, they might carry the torch for the Big Ten this year with the 2 seed. Like I said, Wisconsin, they showed some warts a little bit offensively. If they can't score, it's funny to say it, right?
Right, because we're used to them not scoring.
They can't win. I mean, right. You don't usually say that, but this year they've run a record pace. They've got a lot of offensive talent, but defensively, I mean, they almost beat Michigan and shot 20% from the field. So, right. Maybe they can pull that off in the tournament, but the teams in their region, obviously you got Duke there, BYU, they might meet in the second round. They play Liberty in the first round. I think they can get by Liberty, but after that, it's kind of a toss-up. Baylor or BYU in the second round. But Michigan State, Trey Holloman and those guards are the key to the Spartans. I know Izzo has a lot of experience in March, but this team, they've not had a lot of success in recent years. They haven't been to the Final Four since they were here in Minneapolis in 2019. And I think this team is capable of it, but it has to get really good guard play. They don't have, top-notch front court talent, like all Big Ten type of talent, but their guards are, when they're playing together, they're really, really hard to beat. And Trey's a big part of that. He had 20 versus Michigan late in the season, helped them clinch the Big Ten title outright. And Jace Richardson, hey, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. His dad was a pretty good dunker and played in the NBA, Jason Richardson. So I like this team. I won't say that they're going to win the national championship, but they're going to give themselves a shot to be right there in the end. And, you got 8 Big Ten teams. There's a lot of them that you're like, hey, where have you been at? Where's your consistency? Illinois, they might be a first round, out. Maryland, I really like them. They've been hot lately. They lost to Wisconsin in the conference tournament, but before that, they're one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten, have a really good freshman. So this is an exciting year for the Big Ten because, there's some new teams like, the Pac-12 teams like Oregon and UCLA that are in the tournament. And then you have, kind of the ones that you always see. I know Gopher fans don't want to hear it, but Wisconsin and Michigan State and, the ones that really they were so close but didn't make it, Ohio State and Indiana. Obviously Indiana, that'll be another vacancy that's filled, and, obviously, and Minnesota as well. You're not sure, but, depending on who the coach is, whether it's Iowa's also open, Indiana, right, Minnesota, those teams could look completely different next year, and they might be in the tournament.
We'll see. It'd be fun, Marcus, to be talking about the Gophers in the tournament next year instead of just all these other great Minnesota players in the tournament. But we will see. We'll see where this coaching search goes. Like you said, the 24th is a big date. That's when the portal opens. They ideally would have somebody in place. But if Medved is the guy, we don't know that, but if he's the guy and they make a run, he's not going to be done by the 24th. If they win 2 games this weekend, he's not going to be done by the 24th. So a lot in flux, obviously, still right now, and a lot to watch this coming weekend. Appreciate it as always, Marcus. Good luck. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Marcus. As usual, he's been all over this story. We'll be watching Colorado State if Niko Medved is, in fact, the front runner for this job. They play in just a couple days. If you are a Gophers fan and you want Niko Medved in as soon as possible, you want them losing in that first round so they can make that decision, get him in before the 24th, which, like Marcus said, is when that portal opens wide up. And Royce made a good point the other day. Why does the portal open in the middle of the NCAA tournament? Why not just wait till the end of this thing? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get that facet of it, but this is the reality they're living in. The portal opens in 6 days. If they don't have a coach by that point, if Colorado State goes on a run, or if Niko Medved isn't their guy, that gets dicey because all of a sudden now you got the Wild West. You're missing out on players you could bring in for next year because you don't have a coach, things like that. So a lot for this team and this program to sort out in the coming days. Let us finish with the cooler. Promise you I'm not going to talk about Aaron Rodgers right now. I wrote about him yesterday. The context of the Vikings, why haven't they just said no to him? Hopefully we're going to find out soon that they have said no. Wondering if that's reaching a logical conclusion soon. Don't know exactly, but maybe the tea leaves starting to be more that no, this isn't happening. Everybody can calm down. The larger point I want to make is that, man, the bummer is that this has taken some of our energy away from what a great job they've done in this last week. The free agent signings they made on the defensive line and offensive line. Didn't even talk the other day about Jordan Mason, the running back they acquired from the 49ers. Great pickup there. basically just cost them like a pick swap, and the Ed Ingram pick they got this year. Not much value at all to give up to get Jordan Mason, who was an extremely productive running back last season, averaged over 5 yards a carry for his career, 5.3 yards a carry. He is a battering ram. He's a guy who gets yards after contact. He is going to be a tremendous complement to Aaron Jones and potentially a successor to Aaron Jones, because guess what? He's not 30 years old. He's 25 right now. He's in the prime of his career. He'll turn 26 before the season, but that's still just fine for a running back. He's got a lot of miles still left on him. Only 236 career NFL rushes because he's been primarily a backup behind Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco. So I love that move. I love a lot of what they've done. Leave well enough alone. Get this plan cooking. Get J.J. McCarthy on board. Get him on track to be the starter in 2025. Bring in a veteran backup who can mentor him, who can start games if he has to. Let's get on with the show. Everything else looks great. Let's get on with it, Vikings. Let's just stop all the nonsense. That will do it for me today. Randy Johnson will bring no nonsense tomorrow on Daily Delivery. We'll talk Gopher hockey. We'll talk Gopher football as well, because spring practice starts later this week, so he will be my guest on Wednesday's show. Expecting to have Minnesota United manager Eric Ramsey on a show later this week as well. Guessing Lavelle Neal III will hop on with me sometime later this week too, so plenty of good stuff to stick around for. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow.